It's 10 minutes precisely past 1 o'clock. Let's turn our attention to something everyone seemed to be talking about over the weekend, Taylor Swift. The Eras Tour took over Wembley over the weekend before she returns again in August for a further 5 dates. Her 6 sold-out concerts are a big deal, a significant cultural event that will drive a lot of tourism in London. So today I wanted to look at what it is about Taylor that attracts millions of Swifties. Ben Atkinson is doing a PhD on women and country music, and he studies Taylor Swift and joins us now. Ben, what an academic foray into the world of women. I also understand you also put in Beyonce as well into that.
I did, yeah. It's quite a cool topic to be writing a PhD on, isn't it?
What is it about Taylor Swift that, from your research, why they love her so much?
I think there's been a fan culture around Swiss music for many, many years, but it's the recent Eras tour that really has sort of caused this to blow up, I suppose. You'll know that we are at the end of the Eras tour in the UK. You know, this has been going on for about 2 years. And so there's been lots of anticipation for these shows here in the UK. And when Taylor played in Liverpool a couple of weeks ago, she announced that it is going to end in December. So it's a kind of a one-off thing, a bucket list moment. And if you don't see her on this tour now, it's going to end in December. And we've seen that, haven't we? Because we've had so many people attending these events. I've seen some of the stuff online, the queues coming out of the arena and going back to the tube station, and then all the celebrities that have been there over the weekend as well. It's kind of a who's who, isn't it, really?
And it's interesting because part of your PhD is around country music. And I think it's easy to forget that Taylor Swift started as a country music artist.
She did indeed, yeah. 2006 was her first self-titled record, and that was kind of very, very country music. She actually grew up in Pennsylvania, but convinced her parents to move down to Nashville so she could start a career in country music. And if you follow that kind of line through, her music is kind of not only quite wholesome, but also true to life. And there's this thing in country music, they say, called 3 chords and the truth, where the songs that you're singing and the lyrics you're writing are all about your real life. And that's kind of all the way through most of Taylor's music. And you can see an evolution from Taylor as a country music artist to a huge pop star as well.
And she's had some challenges along the way, which she has overcome very publicly, but she's also been one of those support networks, if you like, for other musicians to say, if I can do it, you can do it. Tell us a bit about her sort of more feminist agenda and how that plays into her music.
Yeah, so of course we know that she's re-recording her records at the moment, her first sort of set of albums, and doing that mainly because she had this situation where she herself faced some misogyny. Her records and her masters were bought by somebody who hadn't been very, very nice to her in her career growing up. And it was something that she felt very strongly about, that she wanted to re-record these records so that she owned them. And then she essentially agreed a deal, because of how big of a pop star she is now, with Republic, her current record label, that she would re-record every album and own all of those masters herself. So this sort of is a big step towards saying, not only to female artists in the industry, but to all artists, actually, you can own your own music and your own story, essentially. And I think that's really, really important. She was the first artist to actually be able to do that, I think.
And I mean, her take on streaming, refusing to allow her songs to be streamed for a very long time, just because of the sort of return on it, and which for many artists is literally negligible. It's a very important fight that she fought.
Yeah, no, it was. And if you think about it, she's now the first billionaire pop star, but she hasn't become a billionaire pop star from the music. It's this tour and it's the merchandise and all the things that are surrounding it that has made her that billionaire pop star. So still, musicians are not making money out of streaming, out of, social media, online music in the way that they did even back in the day when you had vinyl and CDs as the only forms of music, So, yeah, you think Taylor is a billionaire pop star, and she is, but it's not the music that has kind of contributed to most of her wealth. It's all the other stuff that surrounds that, and this tour in particular.
And that's an important point, that it seems like merchandise, whether it's vinyl, whether it's T-shirts, whether it's whatever, sweatshirts, seem to be the way that musicians or artists generally can make money now. The bread and butter of making a record, putting it out, doesn't seem to be the most important part of the creativity. The more you sell in terms of merch is the way you become richer, or at least become more established, which in a way is a sad thing. Did you find that correlation between Taylor Swift and Beyonce?
Yeah, so it is a little strange, isn't it? Because I kind of grew up listening to music as an album where you had maybe 10 tracks and you enjoyed the whole thing and it was a story. And there's been quite a lot online about this recent album that Taylor's done for Tortured Poets Department, where, within an hour of releasing it, she then announced a whole nother album. So, a second side. So in the end, there were 32 songs, I think. And that got a little bit of criticism because people were saying, essentially, how can you, listen to all of this music and absorb it and understand it? It's almost too much. I think one of the quotes that I found was saying, even the Swifties are perhaps a little bit full now. They're not left wanting more because there's too much stuff. And that's the case with the vinyl as well, right? She brought out about 5, 6, 7 different variations of her most recent records. And actually, it's a little anecdote. When I was out in Nashville doing some of my PhD research last summer, I met a young girl and her dad who'd been around 5 or 6 different record stores looking for all the different versions of the vinyl, not to listen to the music, but because when you put them together and flip them over, they made a big mural of Taylor Swift that you would then perhaps hang on the wall. But as the vinyl collector I spoke to said, you would never hang your vinyl records on the wall because that would be possibly the worst way to store them,
That's that's so clever. I mean, her as a businesswoman, it's often not necessarily spoken about, but that level of creativity, I'm sure she has a huge degree of input, or she has people around her who can bring that vision to life, because that is 5 record sales from one person or whatever it might be, which is extraordinary. I mean, as somebody who's recorded an album myself, I would never have thought of that. I'm just buy my little album. But actually, lots of people are saying, no, the most important thing is I want to collect the memorabilia that surrounds her, which is interesting. I wonder, given the fact that you have studied the country music aspects of her, where does Dolly Parton sit in all of this? Because she's the big one, isn't she, with regards to country?
So I was just going to say that, actually, when you talk about Taylor as a business person, she kind of follows in the slipstream of somebody like Dolly Parton.
Oh, I think we might have just lost you, Ben. Oh, no, we have indeed lost Ben just at that point, which is a bit of a shame. Hopefully we can get him back online. If you're a Dolly Parton fan, surely there is for you and for me that whole notion of how, as a woman in business, as a woman in music, the difference that she's made, and also the underlying sense of morality. That's something that comes across quite strongly. I mean, I was reading, as you heard earlier on, about Taylor Swift, the impact she's had on those cities that she's actually visited, and how important her contribution to them with regards to food banks, etc., really is. What are your thoughts on that? 0800 731 2000. We've got Ben back. Ben, you were just about to tell us about Dolly Parton and what you thought about her in terms of the hierarchy of the kind of music she makes, but also her contributions to the culture.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that, Taylor Swift kind of follows in that slipstream of Dolly Parton, because she herself is a really well-known business person. Of course, she merchandises everything that she does. I'm sure she also has people advising her. I mean, recently she's announced a line of pet food, I think, and Dolly Parton wines. And she did an interview lately where she said, when you get to a certain point in your career at a certain age, as she is, she says, people call you up and they want to use your name because it means something. And she often, she will check and make sure. That's the one thing that Dolly does do. She kind of ensures that everything she attaches herself to has, in line with her brand, I suppose. But you think that she, contributed lots of money to the COVID vaccines when they were developed during the pandemic. She runs a literary charity for children all over the world, providing free books from the age of birth up to the age of 5. So these are all things that Dolly Parton does really well. And I do wonder if Taylor Swift, when she wraps up the Eras tour in December, will think a little bit about some of the money that she's earned from it and what she might do with that, charitable-wise. Because she does donate. I think you may have known that she's donated to food banks,
yes.
Edinburgh, Cardiff, London, I think, as well, as part of this. But she hasn't done anything kind of publicly in that way. And I wonder if she may start to do that now that she has this kind of wealth behind her.
And just in conclusion, I mean, we're already talking about the end of the Eras tour, which ends in December. I mean, then you've got this huge gap, haven't you, about what does she do next? I mean, because she could rest on her laurels for the rest of her life and do nothing else and just get on. Do you think she still has the fire in her belly to try to create something new?
Yes. Is the short answer to that. You saw the recent album Tortured Poets Department, which we didn't expect. That came out of the blue. And Taylor herself said that she released that simply because she felt the need to. She said it was kind of like a therapy for her. So I think if she feels the need to release music, she will. And perhaps the next record, I'm being a little bit cynical here, but I think Taylor's best music is when she goes through something in her life that she can write about. So you think about this recent album, it was kind of like her old music, right? Because she'd been through this horrible situation in her life. Not that Folklore and Evermore and Midnights were not great records. They were, but they were different. They weren't kind of the original Taylor Swift that we grew up listening to. So it'll be interesting to see what she does next, and also, you know, what genre does she go into? Because she's kind of done them all now.
You're not hoping for heartbreak in her future, are you, Ben?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
Listen, it's been great to speak to you. Thank you ever so much for taking the time to be with us this afternoon. That is Ben Atkinson. And we've been talking about Taylor Swift all morning. You can join in that conversation, not only about Taylor Swift, but also who is the person that you admire, that you would run and buy tickets for as soon as they are announced. 0800 731 2000.